Good afternoon to you. 507 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We're going to be joined coming up as well by Luke Rosiak over at the Daily Wire. He's going to chat with us about that Virginia Democrat. We call her Susanna, a woman who made a career out of sleeping with her husband on camera for a public audience and is now running for office. Didn't want people to know about that, but she was posting all of this to the internet. It's also crazy. And now some more crimes may have been committed here than were previously revealed. Luke has the details. That's coming up at 5:30. Again, you can join us at 888-630-9625. Let us discuss what is going on with the White House this week. It's been chaotic because as Kevin McCarthy announces this impeachment inquiry, the White House has been struggling to contain the media. In fact, they issued some dictates earlier this week that the media is not to cover the impeachment case seriously. They're not to cover the evidence against Biden seriously. And instead, they're to train their weapons on Republicans. Is the media following suit? Let's explore with our next guest, Miranda Devine. She's a columnist for the New York Post and, of course, the author of Laptop from Hell. Miranda, great to chat with you, as always.
Yes, great to be with you, Vince.
It is isn't it amazing that the White House has given up the pretense and they're just straight up issuing public statements to the media now about what they're allowed to cover?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a sign of desperation because it's not as if they don't have a significant portion of the media already carrying water for Joe Biden. So the fact that they've had to sort of go overt is a sign that they think that their grip on that section of the media is slipping. And in a way it is, because the avalanche of evidence that is coming out of these House Republican investigations, it's coming from whistleblowers and various testimony from Hunter Biden's former business partners, bank records, you name it. It's all kind of reaching a crescendo where even the Washington Post and the New York Times are having to take a relook at their previous reporting. And, you see the media, they're just changing just very subtly their form of words that they use. So they've been saying for over a year that there's no evidence linking Joe Biden to all these misdeeds of Hunter Biden. And now they're saying no direct evidence or no hard evidence. So they've got various forms like that. And that echoes how the Democrats, people like Dan Goldman, who seems to be Joe Biden's number one defense counsel in Congress, and he's changed his form of words in exactly the same way in the same time. So you just see them echoing. And that's why it was hilarious to see the White House counsel's office. This is obviously the product of their war room they set up to protect Joe Biden over impeachment. And it's just hilarious to see that memo come out, basically instructing the media to do their job and, attack the Republicans and protect Joe Biden, because that's what they've been doing.
Yes. And in fact, after that memo came out, it's funny. I just use CNN as an example. Their response this week has been kind of schizophrenic. They've had some coverage where they say that Joe Biden has been telling all of these lies in public. All of a sudden, they're starting to acknowledge that Biden is a dishonest human being. And then simultaneously, they're releasing fact checks on their website where they claim that Kevin McCarthy has no direct evidence of Joe Biden's involvement in his family's, underhanded business dealings. But then if you go through each of the points, they admit that Kevin McCarthy's claim is true, but it doesn't have quite enough evidence for us to take it seriously yet.
That CNN fact check is absolutely hilarious and dishonest because, if you don't deep dive into it, if you just look at the tweets or you look at the headlines, you think that they have fact-checked James Comer's sort of predicate and McCarthy's predicate for this impeachment inquiry, and they found it wanting. In fact, as you say, every single point backs up that it's true. And in fact, in the first two, they say it is true that blah, 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 but and then they've got some bogus excuse. And then in other cases, they say, oh, it lacks context. Ultimately, they have just verified exactly what Comer said. But, they have to give the appearance that they're being skeptical because I guess, in one sense, to give them the benefit of the doubt, that their audience has been so primed on this sort of anti-Trump, pro-Biden kind of narrative since, 2019 pretty much, or actually since Donald Trump walked down the escalator.
For sure.
To actually shift the Titanic is a big ask. And
yes.
You see what happens in the comments section of, say, the New York Times, if a columnist slightly goes off-piste and entertains the possibility that Joe Biden is not, the lovely family man and honest Joe that he pretends to be.
Right.
They just go wild in the comments. And so these media organs are afraid of their own audiences.
For sure. And I think that my sense is that they're also beginning to hedge their bets because they realize the writing appears to be on the wall for Joe Biden. It was like 2 weekends ago, I think, that Chuck Todd had on the biographer a guy who wrote a book about the Biden White House, Franklin Foer. And during that interview, I thought it was very interesting that he asked the author, hey, would you be surprised if Biden stepped down before the end of the year? He gave a very specific time frame. And the guy said, no, I wouldn't be that surprised if Biden stopped, being the nominee for the party by the end of the year. CNN this week has asked multiple high-level Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Jamie Raskin, whether or not Kamala Harris is fit to be vice president again. Washington Post, David Ignatius just wrote a big piece saying that it's time for Biden to go. What is happening here with the media, would you say?
Well, David Ignatius is particularly interesting because he's sort of renowned as the CIA spokesman. He's very in bed with, as they say, the seventh floor of the CIA, which is the management. And so, it's said in Spooksville that when David Ignatius speaks, that's the CIA speaking. And so it's sort of been interpreted that David Ignatius' column the other day saying that Joe Biden should step down is just that the CIA is now done with Joe Biden, that he's too much of a liability. And, I think that Joe Biden's biggest vulnerability was the quid pro quo in Ukraine, and with firing Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor, who was coming after that corrupt energy company Burisma that was paying Hunter $1 million a year. And for some reason, the CIA was caught up in that. And so I'm not sure that they were per se protecting Joe Biden, but because Joe Biden had inserted himself and his family's grift into Burisma, therefore, I guess they were de facto having to protect Joe Biden. And so there was a lot of cover-up done, and very skillfully, because when Donald Trump started getting a little too warm, and Rudy Giuliani a little too warm in their investigations in Ukraine, they were shut down. Donald Trump was shut down with an impeachment. And, looking back now and reassessing the evidence that was available at the time, it's just astonishing that they got away with it, and that Donald Trump was impeached basically for Joe Biden's sins. Incredible story, and I think we've only seen half of it. So I think now that the floodgates have opened, everyone's looking at that whole circumstance of the firing, and now finding information that shows that everything we were told then was a lie. And so they can't shut it down anymore. So I think that they just want Joe to shuffle off so that the attention moves away. And they're quite right in that if Joe's gone, the Republican investigations will fizzle.
Right. So there's a lot of interesting things going on all at once that are all converging. I want to explore this CIA point with you for a moment. So if David Ignatius is doing this at the behest or the nudging of the CIA, hey, just call for Biden to go. Be the first to say that out loud, get some other Democrats on the record, and maybe get the drumbeat going. I'm reminded of Chuck Schumer's quote from 2017. I'm sure you are as well, that he said, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. Joe Biden's scandals here all involve international business dealings, the types of things that no agency would have a better hold on than the CIA. If anyone knows the details of all of this, including recordings potentially of Joe Biden's voice with foreign business leaders, the CIA might have that. And I wonder, is this moment, well, and obviously you and I are engaging in complete speculation here, but educated speculation, I think. Is this the moment where we begin to see the intelligence community and or Democrats begin to leak some of this to the impeachment committees in order to accelerate Biden's demise and to replace him as a nominee?
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they don't need to go to that extent. You know, it would be in their best interest if Joe Biden would just step aside and claim he's got some medical ailment, right? Which wouldn't be hard. So, and remember, Nancy Pelosi, I mean, Donald Trump was president, but she went and got some updating of, what's the amendment where the president can be declared unfit? Anyway, whatever the amendment is, she went and got that
25th.
Updated that's right, in the dying days of the Trump presidency, and everyone thought, oh, she's doing that for Donald Trump because they were so desperate to get rid of him. And remember they said he was crazy at one point, or, you know, senile, ironically. And he went and had the cognitive test and, you know, came through with flying colours. But there was some suggestion at the time that no, Nancy Pelosi was not actually coming after Trump. She was just putting that in reserve for Joe Biden in case they needed it. Because by that stage, of course, I mean, from very early in 2020, it was obvious to anyone who was on the campaign trail. You know, I saw it with my own eyes in Iowa and New Hampshire that Joe Biden was completely gaga half the time and was just, you know, he had to normal stump speech. He needed a teleprompter in these tiny little town halls, etc. So I think they just wanted to have that in their back pocket because probably they probably had donors saying to them, hey, you know, we can't have this guy as president. And so that was probably Democrats reassuring people, look, don't worry, we've got this in our back pocket. In case he does become a liability, we can use it to get rid of him. So I don't think they need to leak anything or air any dirty laundry. If they want to, they could do that, but they would prefer that he just see the writing on the wall. And David Ignatius's column was interesting in that the first bulk of it was about how wonderful Joe Biden was, just waxing lyrical about his legacy, etc. And I think that will be the deal. If ultimately, I mean, he may end up, you know, running for election, but I think that what they would offer him is, look, you can go the nice way and we will make sure that all our media patsies write you up as just the most wonderful president since FDR. All the historians will record you as that. Your legacy will be magnificent. But if you don't do that, we're just throwing you to the wolves and you will end up going in the history books as the most corrupt president we've ever had. Take your pick.
No question. And in fact, that what you just described, the carrot that they would offer him there, is the thing that he desires most. He desires that more than anything. This is why he surrounds himself with White House historians. They all come over for dinner. They decorate the Oval Office. He lets them write all of his speeches. The whole point is he wants a lasting legacy throughout history. The thing he wants more than anything is to be remembered as a great president by historians, and that's why he keeps sucking up to them.
Exactly, and he just loves having them over. They have the run of the place, and they just come in and they just whisper sweet nothings in his ear and tell him that he is the most, he always uses that word consequential, and that's because the historians tell him he's the most consequential president in America's history, or, you know, since FDR. He really does see himself as a great statesman.
Big time. It's just amazing. Miranda Devine, thank you as always. Really appreciate it. And please have a fantastic weekend. Good to talk to you today.
Thank you. You too, then.
Corinne faced the press today. They figured they would let her do it on a Friday, and hopefully the media wouldn't cover it too much. Here she is. Remember, this wasn't too long ago that she said this about whether or not Joe would pardon Hunter.
Hey, let me go back to the first question of the briefing. I know you said not a lot's changed since yesterday and that it's a personal matter, but from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No. She's just, of course, making it up as she goes along. Here she is today saying the same thing.
Second one, would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no.
You know what's going to happen? Joe's going to give pardons to the whole family. It's not just going to be Hunter. It's going to be all of them. Joe's going to pardon himself. Joe's going to pardon Jim Biden. Joe's going to pardon anyone who has a bank account that was on the receiving end of all of this cash. All the Bidens are going to get pardons. Obviously, it's like, I got to go. Don't prosecute us. I'm pardoning everyone in advance. Yeah. Here's Corinne today saying that she's asked about Hunter Biden. And once again, I can't answer that because it involves private conversations about selling out the country.
And can you tell us if the president has talked to his son since these charges came down yesterday?
Yeah, there's nothing new here. As I've been asked that question many times, I'm not going to get into private conversations that the president has with his family. Just not going to speak to it.
Yeah, just can't say a word about this. And then as she's leaving the room today, our buddy Simon Atiba had one more question for her.
Weekend. See some of you in New York.
Affecting your job? Is your breakup affecting your job?
Is your breakup affecting your job? He wants to know how she's holding up after she broke up with the CNN host Suzanne Malveaux after a 10-year relationship. Simon Atiba, an empathetic dude, asking a question, trying to get to the root of the pain that might be animating Corinne these days. There's Simon. This is unbelievable. Is your breakup affecting your job? All right, hang with us. Coming up, Luke Rosiak has an update on the porno lady in Virginia. Good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We have been following with some interest the saga of a Virginia Democrat by the name of Susanna Gibson. Susanna Gibson, she's a candidate for the Virginia State House. And this week, the Washington Post and the Daily Wire, the two outlets principally and in order, who revealed the information, came out with stories that showed that she's actually like a porno lady. She's been making a bunch of porn with her husband. She would accept money from strangers on the internet to produce porn on a publicly available website. And in fact, the videos of her engaged in all of these sex acts are all over the internet. And it wasn't, I guess there wasn't much journalism done on this subject up until now. There wasn't much coverage of it. And then all of a sudden, it just exploded into public view. The videos began being deleted just days before the release of the story. And one of the reporters who's been digging into this and has the best coverage on this subject is my next guest. Luke Rosiak from the Daily Wire is here to talk about the saga of Susanna Gibson. Luke, good to have you with us.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so this story, I mean, it's just so crazy in so many ways. Did the media just not dig into it, and you were one of the first to finally, take a bite out of this apple, or what? What happened here?
So what I learned is that the Washington Post, the Associated Press had this story on September 5th and decided not to run it. Instead, they tipped off the candidate, which is why those videos were deleted. So you could say, if you're a journalist thinking about breaking this story, the first thing is it's got to be right. You've got to make sure it's the same person. But when you put an inquiry into her campaign and then hours later those videos disappear from the internet, that's as good as a confirmation that it's the right person.
Yes.
So even though AP had really strong evidence that this story was a slam dunk, they made the decision not to run the story. They killed it. And then eventually they only put up a quick story after other media outlets had already done it.
Sure. And
so
by
yeah,
your description, and by your description here, Luke, but even worse than failing to run the story, it seems that they became sort of campaign advisors for Susanna Gibson because they tip her off. She deletes the videos, and they never disclose any of this in public until well after the rest of the press begins covering the story.
Exactly. And I mean, come on, this is an obviously newsworthy story. You've got a candidate running for office who's basically apparently fundraising for her campaign by selling pretty extreme sexual acts. I mean, how is that not a story that you want to write as any journalist if your job is to tell interesting and important stories?
Right. So we've discovered, of course, these videos thanks to your coverage, thanks to the coverage of the Washington Post. And in the aftermath of that reporting from earlier this week, her campaign and her attorney, they began insisting right away that she was the victim of a crime and that Governor Youngkin's team was responsible for wrongly attacking her and spreading what they referred to as revenge porn. Can you help me untangle this?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the lawyer is basically accusing other people of defamation or committing crimes, which, you know, in itself is sort of arguably defamation of the Washington Post to suggest that it committed a crime. They're acting like it was a leak. The news outlets leaked a video. Nobody published this video. What they did is inform voters of the conduct of this woman. I mean, she put the videos online, but I didn't even publish a single screenshot of the videos, much less the full videos, and neither did the Washington Post. So they're not objecting to anyone spreading this actual video. What they're objecting to is people knowing about it.
Right.
An interesting thing happened. So first of all, you know, and it wasn't just because you're exactly right. I mean, the idea that Youngkin was responsible for this seems pretty defamatory to me, and it's not just Gibson that's acting kind of crazy here. It's the head of the Virginia Senate Democrats, Lois Lucas, who also blamed Youngkin. I mean, there's no evidentiary basis for that. So you heard the senior Democrat in Virginia is basically doubling down on her support of this woman and saying we're actually going to help her raise more money because of this.
Now, are all Democrats sticking with her? I mean, she has campaigned with people like Senator Tim Kaine and others. Are they starting to establish some distance from her, or are they holding her tightly as well?
I haven't seen anyone disavow her. I know the Washington Examiner did a story where they asked basically everyone who had endorsed her, like all the different interest groups, if they were still standing by her, and no one said that they weren't. The standard that they seem to be laying down is that she didn't do anything illegal. Like, sure, it might be depraved, it might be, crazy, and obviously not something you would want. By the standards of all of history, this wouldn't be something that you would want to elect someone who had done this. But they're just focusing on, hey, it wasn't illegal. And so that's sort of what the line of inquiry that I pursued with my story today in the Daily Wire, which suggests that it was, in fact, illegal. I quoted several lawyers in the state of Virginia who say if you look at the prostitution law, taking money from people online in order to perform specific sexual acts with your husband on screen meets the definition of prostitution. Anytime someone is paying you to perform a sexual act, that is what triggers the prostitution law. It doesn't matter if you're not having sex with the person paying you. So even by the standards of, hey, it doesn't matter, it's not a scandal because it's not illegal, it's seeming more and more like it was, in fact, illegal if you want to be technical about it.
Well, I would imagine that that's the reason why pornography is produced in certain areas of the country, San Fernando Valley, for instance, because it's accommodating to this type of prostitution. But not every state's that way, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's right. Virginia has a pretty strict prostitution law, and you know, the candidate is kind of focusing on, well, she was with her husband in the videos. First of all, in the videos, she talks about having sex with 3 different men in one day and then having sex with her husband at the end of the day and not letting him know, kind of getting off on the fact that he didn't know that she had been with many other people that day. And he expresses that he's not really comfortable with her conduct, but she makes him put up with it. All kinds of weird stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, they're kind of advancing, well, it was with her husband that she was on screen. Who cares? the fact is the prostitution laws are still triggered by the conveyance of money by a third party who's not her husband to induce these sexual acts.
Now, is it just my impression, or has she been lying low since all of this broke? Because I haven't seen any statements from her. I haven't seen anything on social media. She seems to be trying to wait this out.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's, her campaign website hasn't been updated in weeks. I think she's functioning through her lawyer, trying to threaten people and stuff. I think that the fact that it appears to have, meet the standard for prostitution in Virginia is relevant mostly because that's the marker that Democrats have laid down, that it doesn't matter because it's not illegal. There is the question of, could she actually be prosecuted for this? And so I did inquire with the Henrico County Commonwealth Attorney, Shannon Taylor, who would be the person in charge of prosecuting her. Now, Taylor is, like Gibson, a Democrat. So I wondered if maybe that would impact her decision whether to charge or not. I asked her about that, and a funny thing happened. The prosecutor did not get back to me, but 20 minutes after she read my email, I got a call from Susanna Gibson's lawyer, who said he was tipped off that I was working on a story by an anonymous source, a source he wouldn't disclose. So it really raises the question
had you contacted any other person by that point?
Yeah, I had contacted a couple other people, but I don't think, I think, I can't say for certain it was the prosecutor, but the timing strongly suggests that it was. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, I mean, not only do we have her potentially not being prosecuted because of political considerations, and it's, I think, worse than that, there's some active coordination going on behind the scenes between the prosecutor and Susanna Gibson's lawyer.
Yeah, in a sense, that would amount to that would amount to like kind of an in-kind political contribution here if you're like advising the campaign on your media inquiries and your role as a state prosecutor.
Yeah, exactly. And so it raises the same kind of questions we see in places like Loudoun County with Buda Bivarai, where you see prosecutors that are very clearly motivated far and away first by politics and only secondarily by the application of justice. And it does raise some pretty frightening concerns about civil society.
Another piece here, Luke Rosiak, in this Susanna Gibson saga is, you already mentioned kind of how sad it is for her husband, who expresses, he's a willing participant in this, but he also expresses regret for his wife's behavior. But she's also, as I understand it, a nurse and the mother of a couple of children too, right?
Yeah, and she bills herself as a public health expert. But I got to say, I mean, someone posted a blog article online today saying what a strange job it must be to be a journalist. That you're having people having to watch porn basically for work. But I got to say, I've looked at some of this stuff. It's really raunchy. I wouldn't put it in the category of promoting public health. And it really is some pretty wild stuff. And she's out there selling sort of depraved acts for like these tokens that are literally worth 5 cents. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really degrading stuff. And I kind of worry about us as a society if we reach the point where this doesn't sway anyone's votes. If it's like you can learn this about a candidate and it's like, well, everyone's just going to vote for the same person they were anyway, because it really raises a question of is there anything that can cause people to kind of evaluate an election based on the quality of the candidates rather than this blind partisan allegiance.
Yeah, no, you wonder. I'm looking forward to a piece of journalism that involves asking all of her patients whether or not she forced them to wear masks when they would visit her. Like, hey, you got to be sanitary. You've got to wear a mask when you come into my office. Meanwhile, she's filming videos sleeping with multiple men in the same day. It is just amazing what you've stumbled upon here. Luke Rosiak, should we expect any more coverage of this saga?
We'll see where it goes. I think it's certainly, as far as campaign bombshells go, I think this is about as wild as you can get.
It is wild. It is totally wild. And the Associated Press, as you noted at the outset, they finally caught up when they saw that you and the Washington Post had given this some coverage. Meanwhile, they were acting as campaign advisors to her campaign when they thought no one else was looking. It's just
and I can tell you on these videos, I mean, she wanted people to see this. She said, and I love that they're all watching me getting, and I can't say this next part on the radio, it turns me on. I want to see you on Checkmates too. So she's putting this out there for her thousands of followers and trying to get even more followers to watch it.
Hey, one other thing I know in your coverage today, you just reminded me of some of the stuff she's saying in these videos. She did say at one point in one of these videos that she was prepared to make it so that a hotel worker would arrive at her room and she would answer the door naked in order to see their expression and catch it on camera or something like that. You spoke to some legal experts about the arrangement that she described, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that could potentially be indecent exposure or maybe worse. I mean, this would be she was getting a sexual thrill out of, and her viewers were getting a sexual thrill out of this poor woman or man who works for the hotel knocking on the door and saying, I've got room service. And she would say, come in. And then this poor person who didn't want any sexual contact or to see any of this sexual stuff, kind of against their will, would just walk into this crazy sex scene.
Yeah, that seems like, for most of us, that would be a crime. that's like a textbook crime. You don't have to be an attorney to assess that, I think. Thank you very much. Luke Rosiak over at the Daily Wire, a great reporter at a great site. Really appreciate it, sir.
Hey, how you doing, Vince? Happy Friday.
Thanks, Matt.
What Luke was talking about, just real quick, I have 2 points. What Luke was talking about, how he said that, it doesn't want to be normalized and just, you vote whatever your party ticket is. At least she's alive. Democrats voted for someone who was passed away in Pennsylvania the last time around. And then second, KJP said that when she was talking about the abortion issue a handful of months back, that if you weren't with the majority of Americans, you were an extremist. Well, we've seen that the majority of America doesn't want Joe Biden to run again. So does that make any of his supporters an extremist? I'd like someone to ask for that.
That's such a great reminder. One of the things we try and do on the show is like the flashbacks. I want to remind people of this audio. So we'll dig that up and we'll definitely have it handy in the weeks ahead. But that is such a good reminder because Matt, you're right. Corinne at one point had said that, well, the majority are with us. And if you're not with the majority, you're an extremist. And it is definitely the case today. The overwhelming majority of the American people do not want Joe Biden to be president again. That's the 60s, that's the 70%. And so what are we to conclude from that? Well, they're extremists if they want him to be president again, based on the Corinne rule, if you can call it that. So that's an excellent point, Matt. I really appreciate that reminder. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a fantastic weekend. Yeah, the people are lining up against this guy, and if Miranda Devine is to be believed, and she is, by the way, she's been right so much more than so many in the media. The CIA has begun to set its sights on Biden too, in the form of that David Ignatius column from earlier this week. Miranda Devine laying out for us earlier in the program, and go back and listen to the podcast of this. You're going to love it if you missed it. She says, look, Ignatius, famously in Washington, is the CIA guy. If the CIA wants something done, and they want it printed in the Washington Post, they go to their loyal little lickspittle, David Ignatius, and he'll put it in the Post for them. And what he's doing is he's encouraging Biden to bow out. It's time to go. It's time to go, old man. Take the signal, or else. That's what Miranda Devine's pointing out. And look, if there's any agency that has control here of all of the information that would be very damaging to Joe Biden, it would be the CIA. All these foreign business dealings, China, on and on and on. On and on. Just amazing what's happening here. Let me see what else I have for you. I've got a bunch of... I played a bunch of audio for you today of the protesters screaming at AOC, all the Jerry Nadler, all the New York Democrats, as they were trying to justify all of the rampant illegal immigration. It's just amazing. And once again, this New York City protester just letting AOC have it. A reporter asking him what he thought of AOC's speech today.
I think that AOC, when she came out and other members of Congress and they had this press conference, what did you think about their comments?
They will never be allowed to walk down the streets again. Yes. They have destroyed our city, and New York, especially Queens, is woken up.
Let's pull away from this.
It's going too crazy. We can't see this on television. They will never be allowed to walk these streets again. I like how AOC said they wanted to stop by and see it for themselves. I'm sorry, I thought you were supposed to be the lawmakers from New York City. Why did you need to stop by and see it for yourselves? What does that even mean? Does that tell us everything? It sure does. They have zero interest in the well-being of the people within their congressional districts. It's just about the photo ops and making the scandals go away. Let's not let that happen. How about that? Have a great weekend. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.